going to YouTube Content today with another video, and today, guys, what I bring to you is going to be GG Easy Podcast, Episode 2, Season 3. I'm back with Galzo. Thank you so much for being here again. Always a pleasure. And, just kind of tell us what you've been up to.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's always a blast to be on the show and on the channel. I feel like I'm feeling back at home. I'm a regular. Yeah, nothing much. Been testing out the new format as much as everybody else. I think people are relatively excited. We'll talk about that probably this episode. But have been trying to cook some branded for the format for you guys to make sure you guys are taken care of, and also the new decks. Just trying to figure out, like, I think as much as everybody else, what's going on, because there are like so many things going on at once, so many decks, so many things to take care of. But I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, no, I definitely couldn't agree more. There's so many things going on in this format. A lot of people seem to be pretty energetic to play between Malice and Ryziel, which is interesting because we already are seeing a takeover of those two decks, and Snake fell off before it fell off. And, at Anaheim, It was just kind of nowhere to be found, which was pretty crazy. But, I mean, everyone's pretty happy about that for the most part from what I see, just because, like, everyone's so used to seeing it, so it's nice to not hear Snake Eye Ash effect. It's pretty nice. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things about the format coming up here. And do you have any special shout-outs today?
Special shout-outs for what?
Just in general, people you want to just say hi to, people you want to shout out to.
Oh, people?
Anyone.
Shout out to my boy Aluber. I hold you dear to my heart. Yeah. I wonder what Roar Callus would have said if she was here.
Yeah, shout outs to Eva, shout outs to Rourke. I'm sure they'll be back soon. But today you got myself and Galzo, as always. And,
Yes.
Again, I appreciate you being back, and we'll hop into the show. If you want to check my sponsors over in Imperium Duels to Dragonshield, Gem, Cloud, RW, or Grimoire, all down below in the description, as well as using my TCGPlayer link if you haven't already. So we've gotten a lot of new sets since we last talked, and this is something where I think that with the ever-growing card pool, it's always nice to kind of pick out a couple that are just the cooler cards that come out, or things that are underexplored, things that I think that are really cool. One of the things is that in a lot of my videos, you all hear me talk about my friend Craig. Craig is also on the team RW with me, and we talk a lot about the different cards coming out, and he really pilled me on, like, the spell cards. And the one that really got me because of Master Duel right now is Spell Card Soul Exchange. I don't know if you've ever experienced activating Spell Card Soul Exchange and then summoning Masterpiece, but it's kind of gross. And just play like Blind Second Draco. It's a lot of fun. What is one of your favorite newer cards as of recent?
I think that I'm personally a fan of Final Bringer of the End Times. I think
Okay.
it was released in Rage of the Abyss. If you guys don't remember, like, Konami has had in the last like 5 sets, I think, been releasing banger super rare quick play spell cards, and they've been doing it consistently, like always making sure there's like a new creative quick play spell that it's like sort of like a board breaker. So they've done it with, if you remember, Vesper Gearsu, which everybody thought was gonna bring back Orcust, and it actually did because of the artwork. But that was such a cool card, making your opponent decide how many monsters they want to leave on the field. And then based on how many monsters they leave on the field, they get punished for it. But Final Bringer of the End Times, I actually was this close to side decking it in for YCS Bologna in Branded, simply because the card, what it says is that you destroy one monster you control, and then you destroy one card your opponent controls. You probably like target one monster you control, destroy it, then destroy one card your opponent controls, something like that. And it was a really, really good form of removal, I think, in the last format, but I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see how it plays out now. I think now with like Malice and Ryziel being so focused on like gaining advantage, it's not going to be as easy to pop your own cards, but we're going to talk about like sleeper picks later in the episode, and like some of those can utilize cards like Final Bringer, and I think it's cool that Konami keeps giving us interesting tech cards that are like not super hype, not like secret rares, game changers, but that people consistently use in their decks.
Widow Anchor Steel, activate end times, pop the monster you stole, pop another card they control. It's always
Exactly.
striker support, bro.
It's always striker.
It's a really cool
We
card.
keep winning.
We always keep winning. We're always up.
Yeah.
And I like that card a lot too. Honestly, I think that it's really neat. When I saw that, you know what's really funny is I get that question in most of my comment sections where people are like, "Are you playing End Times?" And I'm like, "It's a good card. It's cool."
It's a good card. I mean, it's straight up a good. It reads as a very good card, and I think it has its applications. A deck that can utilize it will benefit from it a lot because it's basically a pop for any card. If you gain advantage from your like popping your own cards, then the more the merrier. I think.
You know, there's another card that it's like older, and we saw a little bit of play out of it that I think is another thing like End Times that is like really undervalued, and that's Blizzard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, back in like Dark Ruler format, I suppose. I think it was. I don't remember. Maybe it was even like the height of Castro format, or maybe a little bit before.
It was around
Um,
there.
yeah, that you just needed to negate Dark Ruler no more. I think the card is like, I think it's a bit past its prime. If I remember correctly, what it does, it's a quick play. It targets a face-up spell card your opponent controls and
Yeah,
negates its effects. Then, if it's supposed to go to the graveyard, it goes back to the hand or something like that.
correct.
So it's kind of weird, I think. But hopefully we're gonna get another card similar to this soon, where it's just like target one card your opponent controls and negate its effects. It's like a generic quick play negate. It's gonna be very strong, but I think it's going towards that, honestly.
That could be our red reboot. Give us one for traps, please.
Man, this is the Red Reboot fan club podcast over here.
Red reboot to 9,
The
bro.
only two people on the planet who really want it back.
Yeah, Red Reboot needs to come back. That card is too good, and it was also better because like we actually could respond to things like D barrier, not just get blown out. It's just like, yeah, like so my argument for that card, and you can tell me if this is like disingenuous, but like if you're telling me that I just have to auto die to D barrier and like trap decks can just openly set 5 and play only 3 monsters in their deck, isn't it a little silly that if you're telling me to main deck back row out, that I can't tell trap decks to main deck cantraps?
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Basically that's the whole story behind this card. I don't want to, get us off track here, but I think that right now there's always the discussion of necessary evils in the game, and I think it's basically like the top 3 are probably like Deep Barrier, like right now, because Konami has been doing a solid job at like starting to get rid of some of them. Like we've had a pretty good cleanse this past year, but still we have like Droll Shifter, Deep Barrier that are like looming over like the problematic, very heavy floodgates of the game. And unless something really drastic happens within the design space of Yu-Gi-Oh, like for example, a card that is gonna warp like every single deck. Mulcharmies didn't really do that, to be honest. Then maybe Konami would think differently about these cards, but I think they are very happy that there's like a cycle of decks that just like one of them plays Shifter and eliminates the other one of them plays Droll and eliminates the other one plays D-Barrier, so on and so forth. It doesn't like Red Reboot is just like very controversial, I think, but I think Konami really likes these cards at 3. And I think I don't know. I mean, saying on this show that Shifter isn't that bad is probably like heresy, but we'll see how the format moves.
Yeah, I mean, like, even this format, like, as long as you're playing one of the better decks, I think it's okay. Like, you have lines around it. I still think...
That's exactly the point. Like, all the engines, man. Play around everything. Like, half your deck does something, half your deck does something else. Then you always play around something, right?
Yeah, I do think that the card's still really ignorant. I don't like lingering cards, so Dwellers, Lancias, Drolls, all the cards that just say you can't do anything about it. Like, make a card, too, that just says, like, turn off a lingering effect. Like, I don't like that at all. Like, those are the cards that I think are just generically bad card design. They need to go.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it creates a weirdly good balance within decks right now. And I know that later on we're going to be talking about like engines. And I think this is the story of 2024, 2025 season. Like engines and having half your deck lose to something, but half the other deck doesn't lose to the same thing, right? So you can still generate something under that, like
So
floodgate.
talking about different decks in the format, I have a sleeper pick here, and I know that I've been hammering this one in for weeks now, but Melodious is like a $20 deck. And there was even a DB Grinder video, a shout outs to Austin. Pretty recently, it was Melodious versus, I think it was YuGiOh Fiendsmith or just Fiendsmith, I
Yeah,
forget.
I just saw
And
that video. Yeah.
yeah, and Melodious kind of cleaned house. And it was nice to see because, like, the deck itself can still perform. And I know I posted a list a couple days ago in the budget guide that had Nib in Melodious, and that's a little weird because you want to activate things like First Movement. But if you want to play cards like Droplet to counteract that, so you can be able to get rid of your Nibiru, the guy in the video, I believe, like made a Typhon and bounced it out of the way, which I thought
No.
was kind of funny. That's something where you have to make those trade-offs in decks where, like, Nibiru right now is prime. Like, if you're not playing Nibiru or Talent, I feel like you're inherently behind. Like, those cards are so strong right now. And you
Yeah.
have to alter your deck to make sure that you can win in the format. So even a deck that's at a lower ceiling than the better decks in the format, you need to cater it to be able to beat the meta and not just what you're used to playing in it.
Yeah. I love formats where Nibiru is good. These are the best formats in my opinion. Whenever Nib comes back into fashion, I'm like, I mean, if Nib works, it means that the format is like relatively back and forth. If you can actually get nibbed, I think that's cool. I like this. Sleeper picks. Okay, so first of all is Despia. Hey, it's definitely not up to the caliber of Melodious because Melodious is such an annoying deck. But I think that Despia actually got better with the last Forbidden and Limited list. Gimmick Pop and Nightmare Ban aside, which I think was just like, what were
Silly.
Konami doing? What are you doing, dude? What are you? There's just like a very clear answer on the wall, and they're just playing around it. Whatever, fine. You can play Ito. All in my next video. Check it out. But I think why Despia got better is that Fire King Snake Eye is kind of gone out of the picture a little bit. I don't think it's not playable. By the way, Final Bringer of the End Times in Fire King is really, really good. So, for example, in Belonia, like my losses were just like Snake Eye Fire King. 3 Impulse, 3 Ash, the deck really, really dies. But you can still play a lot without activating Branded Fusion. And now, when most of the decks, like Malice, you might encounter Impulse in the side or in the main sometimes. But other than that, Impulse actually isn't that popular. So you're just playing against like the 3 Ash, the Nibiru that doesn't really hurt you, some hand traps that you can play around. So I think it's actually an interesting and very biased sleeper pick. And I think honorary mentions will be like, I think Goblin Bikers maybe. It's actually a pretty cheap deck that I kind of recommend people to pick up. It also relies on like Fiendsmith a little bit, but it could also play without. And it's just a pretty strong deck for like a smaller tournament setting that I think is really good.
I still won the match against it on DV the other day, but man, was that annoying. I had like
It's
detonator with 3
annoying.
attachments, and I was just like,
It's
stop
annoying,
detaching
man.
my materials.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
just-
super annoying. If it's like an Xyz meta, their cards can be really, really oppressive. Like they will
yeah.
detach your materials, and that could be very annoying. If you're going into a tournament with Ryziels, like, yeah, man, just play Goblin Bikers.
Did you see the Mimigul purely Kashtira deck talking about Xyz?
Maybe. I've seen a lot of Mimigul lately, but that sounds like it makes sense. I think Castra and Mimigul make perfect sense, and then probably you just combine it with the level ones, and you make some of the Xyz monsters.
I was looking at that and I was like, what are we cooking? It was quite the time.
Dude, Mimigul is like cancer for real. Like if I'm against Mimigul, I'm gonna be pretty scared. Like you can't normal summon? No way.
That's why we play Droplet, friend. We just send their monsters for free.
No, but we're under shifter, man. We can't. We
Oh
can't
no,
drop it.
I'm not the funny spellcaster. No, that's not good. I hate that card so much. Like, I was in a case tourney, it was 2 months ago,
Mhm.
and my one loss was to Mimigal game 3 shifter me, and I was like,
Yep.
yep.
Yep. Guys, Dark World just topped the regional in Nicaragua, and the deck is $36. What's your excuse?
Valid. We also just got Jackalope and Sneck back to a little bit more.
Bro, that's pretty hype.
So that's the first thing everyone thought about, though. They're just like, oh my god. But, like, also they're threes, so, like, album breaker, you know?
Yeah.
But, talking about our meta, Fiendsmith everywhere! It's everywhere! And I was joking, I was like, at some point, they're just gonna play Fiendsmith Tenpai, and now we have Fiendsmith. How do you feel about the Fiendsmith engine just being everywhere? Every deck.
I think I don't remember which person said that, but I heard it and it was really. I think it was Matthew. What was his name? The game designer from Konami who was on Josh and Farfa's podcast. Matthew Bell. He was a lead in the Konami R&D offices in Europe for like 11 years. He was responsible for many archetypes and cards that you guys know. He's been around for a while. Shout out to Josh and Farfa's show. That episode was amazing, just getting the inner learnings of the game. So essentially what he says there is that card games, and if you think about like Pokemon, if you think about MTG, even I would assume like Lorcana has that as well. The whole thing revolves around resource management and managing your resources. The idea behind like a solid balanced card game is that resources deplete over time, right? And this is where, like, for example, resources in Yu-Gi-Oh is like very different from deck to deck. Some deck needs like spell cards, some deck needs like to tribute from the hand, some decks like need extra deck space. Resources are very different in Yu-Gi-Oh because you don't have a mana system or like some sort of cost system that is consistent. So, for example, this is where grind game comes into play, right? If my deck has a good grind game, it means that I have an ability to manage my resources better than you over time. The problem with Fiendsmith is that they never run out of resources, ever, because the engine is based on recycling every single thing back into the deck, which in theory creates a very big imbalance in how like card games even in general work. This is why it's such a problem. The fact that you can restart your engine every single turn and that it can do a lot every single turn is a problem.
I would definitely have to agree with that. I like the Fiendsmith cards. I don't know if it's just like
I like them too, by the way. I like them too. I'm not like a fan, but that's like if there's a problem, that's why it's probably a problem.
I definitely agree with that. I think honestly it would be fine if it wasn't for the silly trap card. Just other than that, it's like there's ways to
That's
dodge
not the
it.
problem. That's not the problem, man.
But
That's
like,
not a problem.
if they summon Desiree, I'm like, haha, funny rock, right? If they summon Wave King, I'm like, I can deal with that. But then like, having to go through extra steps just to out the Paradise, I think that's the most annoying part. Because like, I've talked to people, and they're like, listen, I've started playing X and X card just to deal with it. And like, you can do so many things to dodge it, but like, I understand that like the resource management part of it is the problem of it. But, like, there's just so many layers, right? Because it's not just dealing with the monster on board. Now it's dealing with the trap card. Then it's dealing with the follow-up. And there's a lot that it has to offer. And I think that the number one problem, in my eyes, with it is that you always have to throw hand traps early if it's, like, an imperm. Because once they set up a Desiree, you can't use the Imperium. But if it's like game one, they're setting up Caesar, so like you can hold that. But as long as you have the foresight to know, like, hey, like you can't use this card unless you have like an Imperium later or something. Definitely interesting.
Uh, I'm not sure I agree because I think like if my only interruption in hand would be an Imperm and I'm facing like, let's say my opponent is playing pure Fiendsmith, nothing else, right? So the Imperm either trades with the DDD on my turn or hits the sequence.
Yeah,
So I'm like, I'm fine with an Imperm, right? But I also think like the trap card, I mean, it's obviously oppressive, unless you just go straight into Whitebinder on your first Link summon. That usually works, people. That usually works. They don't have enough light spells to resolve the trap, the light fiends in the grave. But yeah, I think that resource recovery is a problem. Of course, like the entire engine revolves around like one card resolving, which is also problematic to some extent. And then there's Moon of the Closed Heaven, which means that if you didn't get to the engine, you can still get to the engine very easily. And this is where you start playing like Kasturas and stuff that give you like free summons on the board. And yeah, I mean, it's hyper accessible. You have infinite resources, and it provides really strong quality interruptions, at least like one or two each turn, from one card. So like, yeah, even though I like the cards, it's like it's obviously very strong. Tracked and Fiendsmith Engraver got limited in the OCG this past ban list. I'm not sure if it's gonna happen on our end. I don't think so, but you can see that like people are understanding that okay, it's very overpowered.
yeah, but even with one engraver, like it still does so much. And I mean, that's
Yeah, I think one
interesting.
engraver is going to be rough. I think one engraver is going to be rough, even though like I think your turn 3 is going to be a little bit more problematic because you want to set up like on your first turn, you want to make sure you have like at least engraver, lacrima, and requiem in your graveyard by the time you pass to your opponent, and then you have like either the trap or whatever you have. But then if you start having like one engraver, it's going to be weird. Keep in mind, Fiendsmith is getting support in Supreme Darkness. There are 2 Fiendsmith cards, like one trap, one fusion. And we've already had Fiendsmith Lacrima banned in the TCG. So remember that. Like Fiendsmith, we're not even dealing with actual Fiendsmith right now. It's like neutered to some extent, but it's still incredibly strong.
Yeah, and I definitely am interested to see where they're gonna go with this. I'm surprised they didn't ban Moon.
Yeah, I was really expecting to see Moon on the list. Really, really expecting. And also one other thing that is like very like prominent with this engine is that it's so, while it is a little bit taxing on extra deck space, it's so light on main deck space. It's like 5-6 cards, right? Depending on what are the ratios you play. And that's like insane because we moved from like an 11 card 2 brick adventure engine to like a 6 card make whatever the hell you want engine that is just like so good. And also it just brings itself back every single turn. So power creep is happening for a few years and now we're seeing it like once again.
Yeah, Adventure who? We have
Yeah.
not seen that
My
in
boy Griffin is
forever.
still banned in the OCG, I think.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's insane.
It's definitely a time whenever we start seeing the engines we thought were like the best that are just gone. But should engines like this one live that long? Having Kashtira, I thought that Unicorn was gonna get the boot, but I don't like engines like this that are just like free body, extra deck rip, birth banish. I don't like things like this at all. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. I think that, I mean, look, there is some hypocrisy here in the way we're looking at it because, like, let's talk about Malice Sky Striker. Isn't it like incredibly based?
That's
Why
cool,
aren't we
yeah.
mad about like? Yeah, I mean, I think everybody would agree the deck is not like super toxic, right? Like, especially the inclusion of like the engaged like Sky Striker engine within it. But then again, you have engines like Hashira, which is just too much, man. I think it's also been too long. I think it's it's time to like they actually moved Unicorn from semi-limited to 3 like a few months ago. They brought it back to 3, and Fenrir is still in 3. The field spell is still 3. I can't even. I'm trying to wrap my head around like why I think they're bad. But maybe you go first, and then I'll come up with something.
So I think that these are just like a bit more oppressive because like having to have only a 15 extra deck and then have like important pieces get ripped is already obnoxious, and then getting punished for trying to hand trap your opponent is the same reason why people have such an issue with things like talent, because Unicorn is not serving its intended purpose anymore. Now it's just, I'm gonna slap this on the board and I'm gonna attempt a combo. By the time it gets to your turn, I'm gonna rip 2 cards out of your extra deck. And that can be extremely taxing. So where you're already trying to like interrupt your opponent, I feel like this is another talent situation, which we'll talk about that too. And I feel like talent's a lot worse than dealing with this. But like, this is still another thing where it's like, all right, cool. I'm going to summon this. I'm going to rip something out of extra deck. I know exactly what you're playing now, and I'm going to put my board to be exactly what it needs to be. And I think for me, that's the most obnoxious, because now we know what kind of hand traps you play by what deck you're on. And it's one of those things too where it's like, now we know what to respect, what not to respect. Oh, you nibbed me anyway. Activate Burst, bring me back Unicorn. At least I have 2 interruptions now already. And then you can, even if you wanted to, let's say you have like a Bishop, because there's so many engines right now. You go the nib token and Unicorn into an IP. You pass. Now you have Bishop IP, and it's so much. I don't like that.
Yeah. I'm really wondering what they're going to do about that, because I think now it's a very clear. I think it's something that we've seen like Kastura, Ubel, right? We've seen Kastura being included in Snake Eyes as well. It was like a very, very powerful build for Kastura Snake Eyes before like the massive OSS ban. So it's just incredibly free, and it generates a lot of advantage. We're talking about like 2400 bodies that have an inherent ability to summon themselves once you out the other one, right? So it's even risky to interact with them. They both combine, like Fenrir and Unicorn, both combine like the 2 probably most oppressive like interaction mechanics when it comes to like looking and taking cards out of the extra deck and then banishing face downs, which is just like, you had Arizard and Diablosis, but those are like the mini versions of them right now, and it's still bad. And on top of all of that, Birth is of like a super overtuned card. Like, it does not have the right to be so impactful. Banishing 3 cards face down on like a spell activation, like why is that even a thing? Engines should not live this long, but I think Kastura is unique in how much it is oppressive, because we've seen Adventurer is an engine that eventually was phased out pretty quickly. Fusion Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer, it was phased out. It was limited, but it was eventually like phased out, or like a little bit powercraft out of the game, just because of the size and the commitment that you need to have in your deck. But like Kastura, I really expected Unicorn to get banned on this list, because bro, it's been like 2 years or something. Like, the card has been out for a long, like all the Kastura cards have been out for so long. These cards came out with Cartesia and the Bestials on the same set. And like the Bestials have already gotten it. Magnum is at 1. So come on, man. I think Kastura is like, I'm so just tired of this. I'm also very tired of the pure deck, to be honest. Stop playing that deck. I mean, they've done it with Branded, they've done it with Dragon Link. Sort of like made a ban list that says, stop playing this deck, please. I expect it in the next ban list in the TCG.
I would have to agree. I think that it's about time.
Get rid of. I can't
too long.
Special summon Fenrir and then like, oh my god, the mind games. Do they have the birth in hand or not? Do I negate it? Am I gonna get punished? Come on, just stop.
Yeah,
stop.
I could not agree more. Talking about where we're at with the format, like, do we like the format? I think the format now It's enjoyable at the moment. I
I
think that
agree.
it's pretty cool.
Speak your truth, man. I agree. I like the format a lot. A lot. There are
It's
also a lot of decks, to be honest.
one of those things for me where it's like I never really liked Sprite, and I thought Sprite was just like not the kind of cards for me. I don't know, like just did not care for the lock that they had with Gigantic, and I didn't really care for like how the deck worked. Um, we all are under the same assumption, I'm pretty sure, that Ryziel are just leftover Sprite arts with armor on them, and they all have a lock the same way the Sprite cards
Damn.
did. The Sprite
Damn.
cards were level 2s, now these are level 4s, so they're just the level 4 sprites. They're like the older brothers. So, like, to me, I'm just looking at these like, okay, so this is like new age Sprite. And I didn't like these cards at all. I really didn't. And then it was 3:30 in the morning, and I was playing on DV, and me and the Ryziel cards made an agreement that we're gonna be friends. So that was one thing where I
Lean
started
into
like
it.
rolling Yubel and whatnot. I was like, wow, these cards are pretty good. And
Yep.
we get to finally use Mirror Logic in like a meta sense where it's not just like a cheesy like Dogmatica thing. And I was like, I like that. Like Mirror Logic is a broken card. We finally can use
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
And more love for rank fours. Obviously, rank fours are like the craziest thing we've had. There's like 3 pages of them. And it was really funny when we first got these cards. My first thought was maybe we get to use Karen Gorgon again, and it's not a card at all. But I like
You
that
can
rank
play
four.
it. You can definitely play it.
You can
Um,
for sure.
yeah.
I like that card a lot, but I like the format. I think it's cool. How do you feel about it?
I I have this weird nostalgia because it feels like Tearlament Sprite, like the beginning of Tearlament Sprite.
Right.
Like Tearlament wasn't like at its final form, and Sprite was actually much more mature as a deck. Like Tier was still missing the Ishizu cards and Bestials and stuff like that, and Rule Kalos, and Sprite was like pretty mature. And people were like, okay, Sprite was like hit really quickly in the OCG, but Tier Elements was kind of overlooked. And I like a set that has like two powerful decks fighting for supremacy. I love it. And also, I gotta say, I think the decks, I mean, keep in mind that everybody has a different budget, but I think the decks aren't as expensive as they could have been. I think you can play these decks for like 200, 300 at like a very high competitive level, and you definitely don't need to drop like $1,000 on the deck. I think like Snake Eye Fiendsmith was a very expensive deck at the time, and now we have like Ryziel is relatively expensive, but again, if you don't play with Fiendsmith and you just play pure, you can be very competitive for a pretty okay price. And I think the decks are also a good investment for the future because this is only wave one of support. These decks are going to get 2 or 3 more like waves of like 2 new cards each. It's going to be insane. So that is the side that I like of the format. But there's another side that I really hate, and that's Yubel, and that's Tenpai. And I'm just really frustrated that these decks are still around. And I really don't like them. But I do like the variants. But I think also the new decks are like so incredibly powerful that Yubel and Tenpai like matter a bit less now. But once again, if you win die roll with Yubel and your opponent doesn't open any hand traps, they're gonna be in a world of pain.
Tenpai is still around. It's still kicking. Somehow it's
Oh
still
god.
kicking.
I
And
mean, it's not
everyone.
somehow. It's by. I mean, the cards are still available.
Right.
Like as long as there is one copy of Chandra and Kaiman in summoning, they're gonna get to it. And once it resolves, you lose the game.
That's the crazy part, too. And I was looking
Yeah.
at that on the ban list, and I started cooking immediately on DV. Like the second it hit midnight and like DV finally updated, I was like, all right, bet, run the ladder, and I was on Tenpai and I was killing it.
Yeah. It's still good. Like it's still very good. Will people decide to play it? Maybe less. maybe less, but still, like if you want to, and I've seen, I'm not gonna leak the goo here because it's for the next regional. There are cards that I've never seen online being played right now in Tenpai that really boost the deck. And it's not Tenpais, and it's not like Fiendsmith, and it's not Masked Dragon, and it's not whatever. Um, the deck is very much still alive. Don't worry about it. It's very much alive, and I wonder if like, so what's the end game? Like, do they have to ban another card next ban list for the deck to die? Like, what's going to happen? They are like, this deck already got 4 cards limited. Prosperity, Sangin Kaiman, Sangin Summoning, Chandra. What else needs to happen?
They have to ban a name.
I think so too.
Like one of the names, Fadra, Chandra, like you pick your poison, but you literally have to ban a name.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a shame that they didn't just go with it like fully, right?
Listen, if they ban my Kit Kalos, they can ban Chandra.
With the quickness. I don't understand, like, why not, man?
Why can't we have Kit?
I think that they okay. So I think that they thought that they don't want to destroy, like, I think they're looking to not ban decks altogether. Like, they don't want to say this deck is unplayable. Like, you've bought the cards and you cannot play them anymore. So they want to keep an excuse for, like, you can still play the deck to some extent and find creativity. So you do see Tenpai a lot less now. So I think maybe, like, even though we're not like super happy with it, maybe it works to some extent, and maybe we need to be like a little bit more patient and see that maybe it's not that big of a deal.
That case tourney I went to the other day, there was 5 of them in the room, and I think 3 made top cut.
Yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. It's a matter of like, do people pick it for a tournament? If they do, then you're gonna be in like a world of problems. If they don't, then yeah, nice. Like I think Konami was like, maybe people would want to just stop playing them a little bit, right? Like phase it out. But obviously, super cheap deck, very strong. Why the hell not, right?
Yeah, and we do have a lot of Tenpai in the room. Whenever I go to events, it looks like, but maybe it's okay. But I still don't love the deck as it is. But I will say one thing: if you are able to hand trap Tenpai right now, it feels amazing. Because if they got normal Hydra and you Veiler them, and then they're just like, pass. You're just like, see, this is how it should be, because it's not like
this
so
is what
much
they were aiming for,
right?
I think this is what they were aiming for.
So you're not just like, oh, please God, don't have a Chandra on your hand, right? Like a lot of times it's just like, oh, they don't, crazy.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a W right there. But on the flip side of that, the only card that punishes harder than anything right now is Triple Tactics Talent, and we see this card be labeled as very, very bad in some formats, and the best godsend card ever in other formats. Is this card healthy? I don't think so. I think this card is degen as hell. Like, it 3 banned effects that now one's legal, but like, in my opinion, it's still banned because it's literally not Change of Heart. Talent is like the most broken Change of Heart because it doesn't target. So, like, for me, like, whenever this card resolves, if my opponent says draw 2, I'm like, oh. Like, thank God.
Thank God.
But, and that's weird because we always ask desires. We're always like, absolutely not, you're not drawing 2 on me. But, like, when they say draw 2 with Talent, it's like the biggest sigh of relief. But, like, when they go, look at your hand, like, Mind Control got Narada, so, like, not Narada, but, like, a game mechanic change, so you can't look at their hand. They banned a pointer. Like, we should not be revealing private knowledge. That, like, blows my mind. I hate that so much. But how do you feel about Talent?
I definitely agree. I'm a hater for Talent. I think basically for the same reasons you said. I mean, there are definitely benefits for this card. I think that if it didn't have the hand effect, then maybe it would be a little bit more justifiable. I think the main problem is that Konami obviously promotes interaction. Like this is one of the main things in Yu-Gi-Oh that make it very different from other card games is that you have like very high level of interaction on both turns from both players. So why there's like an infinite cycle of like you promote interaction, you release hand traps, and then you have like talents to punish the interaction for like you release broken decks that requires interaction. We use the cards that you printed so that we can interact with those decks because otherwise we lose the game on the spot. But then our opponent has a talent to make sure that we don't win the game, even though we interacted. I do though. I do commend Konami for if you look at like the recent years, and if you put aside Malcharmi, Perulia, and Fualos, or like generally Malcharmis, Konami really hasn't pushed monster hand traps so much as in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think they try to like keep the obviously all the good ones have already been printed, right? You don't need any more. But they're not introducing new ones except for the Malcharmis that usually won't lose to talents, right?
So I think the thing too about talent is even though it's just during the main phase, talent to me is effectively just gamma. Like if you are going to be hand trapping your opponent and then they go, "Let me look at your hand," and then they see either one thing that's really funny is when they look at your hand and you just have like the god hand and they just scoop anyway because they're just like, I can't beat this hand. I've seen that happen before. That's hilarious. But when they see the one hand trap and they pluck it and it's like you bell and they just make full board, you just auto lose. So it's kind of the same thing as when like we went reveal gamma and then make Ass Dragon summon Baron, and then you're like, oh, sick, I lose. Like, it's the same thing in my opinion. So, I don't know, that's my reason for, like, not liking talent. I'm still gonna play it at 3 in every deck right now, absolutely. If the broken card is legal, you play the broken card. But I still am on the side of I like interaction, and I like hand traps to be effective. I don't like when it's, I have the hand trap, I can finally play the game. It's no, I have the talent. I'm gonna play the game.
It's a vicious cycle. I think the same thing. You gave a good example with Gamma. That Gamma got booted for like being too powerful and Ass Dragon and Baron and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, they've kind of created a cycle that is very hard to get out of. And I think all these cards are like just like cyclical and like very powerful decks, very good hand traps, very good like talent-esque cards, right? Now Dominus cards, by the way, Dominus cards are like, let's power creep talents. I mean, who would have thought that talent needed a power creep? But apparently it did. So hopefully I think talents is it's sort of like annoying because sometimes you would have the talents and your opponent would not activate anything going first. And it's kind of like a dead brick in your hand. But overall, it's a very, very, very good card that I think, even though it's like, I think maybe at 1, it's fine. Just so you don't like have it all the time. I don't know. And you probably wouldn't play it if it was at 1.
Yeah, I don't know. Even in Snake format, people played it at just 1 in their deck. And then they would have it for like
I honestly play 1 in Malice right now.
Yeah, so even at 1, I think you still just play it for the sack factor. It's like the cold buy.
Yeah, exactly. You just play it. No, never mind. Just ban it.
You just still
people
play
are
it.
just gonna call us haters, man. So
I mean, I'm already the number 1 hater in a lot of people's eyes in this game, so it's okay.
No, it's fine. I think that it's just like, don't think about it as us complaining about every single card. It's just like inherent design flaws in the game's logic that we're baffled by, right? I mean, it's not like, oh my god, it's 3, like, okay, GG said like it's 3 banned cards in 1, but it's not even that in my eyes. It's just like a weird philosophy of always like undermining their own design decisions at every single turn. So like very strong decks need very strong hand traps. very strong hand traps, need good forms of punishing like thrust and talents. And then when that's too strong, you need cards like Dominus, Impulse, and Purge that don't even interact with those cards. It's just going to go on and on and on, and we have to deal with it. The Konami design philosophy is distorted, and that's just going to be how it is.
Yeah, and I would like to throw a little opinion on the end of that too, and just say, you know, like, we still play the game. We still enjoy what we do. We enjoy making content, and you know, I've known Galzo for forever now, and I'm so proud of him with his channel right now. That's so wonderful to see, and you're doing a great job. This game is still fantastic to us, and it's still something that we enjoy to play, and we have a good time with it. I still go to locals and go to events, but like, we care a lot about the game, so when things like this come up, we're going to give you our honest opinion on it, because that's something that we would rather do than just like, oh my god, this card's amazing and it's so good for the game and it's so healthy. Like, you're going to get my honest side of it and be like, no, this card's awful, but like, I'm going to play it because the card's crazy, but like, it should not be in the game.
Yes, you can criticize society and take part of it, and it's all like just about like caring for the game. And honestly, like, it's interesting discussions, right? Because some things could be just like dumb degenerate shifter cards, right? But some, like talents, could have like a lot of nuance to them, right? Why do you think it's bad? Why do you think maybe it's a little bit too toxic? I don't think anybody could justify like calling someone a hater for hating shifter, right? It's so obviously like the most dumb card in Yu-Gi-Oh right now, right? But I for one like having a good discussion about the nuances of Red Reboot, for example, the nuances of Triple Tactics Style. I think this is like, think about the level of complexity of this game that we can have these discussions, and I think we should just be thankful to be playing a game like this.
They always ask to talent, not why talent.
Yes.
But talking about tech cards, what are some cool tech cards? I think Reaper is still always cope. It's always cope, but like, it's funny.
But it always makes sense.
It always makes sense. Do you Reaper?
Like, shit, do I play Reaper right now? It's so good for the Requiem and stuff. Why not, man?
You hit Whitebinder or you hit Detonator, and then you're like, what do you do?
Cryptor can bring back a banished Malice monster.
Oh, there you go. So you gotta make Cryptor, and then you get your Whitebinder. So I guess it's like,
exactly,
it makes things harder, right?
Yeah, but everybody's like, what if I Reaper Requiem? That's pretty good. You cannot bring that back.
Yeah. Just like,
it's
no
really
access.
Good. I always love Reaper. Every start of the format, or like a very narrow form. I mean, it's funny because this format is not narrow, but like every deck has like the common denominator of like the picture you made earlier with like Detonator Fiendsmith, Whitebinder Fiendsmith, Fiendsmith Castra, Fiendsmith Pydra. So you have that common denominator, which is cool. I think Kaijus, I think, are going to be back this format. Dealing with, you have like two decks that are also like Ryziel and Malice. They're so similar in a lot of ways because they're like centered around like a pivotal boss monster with like a lot of really annoying stuff behind, like around it. So Kaijus are going to be back. So you can just like Kaiju the Detonator, Kaiju the Terahertz. And also the same way Lancia is back, I think people are going to play Chaos Hunter. I think it's also very good against Kashtira. So people are going to play Chaos Hunter. If you don't know what it does, it's a level 7 Fiend that when your opponent special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can discard one card and then special summon this card from your hand. And once it's on the field, your opponent cannot banish cards. So it's essentially a Lancia on legs, but it's obviously like it continues as the game evolves. And since most removal right now, like direct removal, at least in like Malice, is like an SP Lil Knight or something like that. So you can't even SP a Little Knight the Chaos Hunter, but you can like Firewall Dragon bounce it or something like that. But you don't want to bounce it because it's just going to come back. So it's annoying. I don't think it's that great, but people are going to play it.
I do like Blizzard right now because of talent. I'm gonna throw that out there. I think the talent's
Ooh.
very annoying, and it's usually like the craziest board breaker right now. So like, if you want to Blizzard anything, kid, talent's kind of nice. The other thing too is if Malice becomes like the better deck, if you want to play like Foolish Return and put back Whitebinder when they throw it in grave and try to banish it, that's kind of nice. But a lot of times they'll use the trap
Ooh.
to get rid of it.
Oh no. Oh no.
They'll bring it back and they'll put it in grave. So either end of turn, I will banish it with the Bishul just to get out of the grave, which is kind of nice. So they can't just like banish it with the Bishul on their turn. They can always bring it back with the GWC, so you have like build for that. But one of the things is like when they go to pass, if it is still in the grave and you can like foolish return it, it's kind of nice just so you don't have to deal with it off like a GWC. But that's another card I like thought about. There's a lot of different options you can play right now, a lot of different cool tech cards. But I do like the Game of Seal over Terror right now. I think that's really strong.
One other thing is gonna probably be Nightmare Griffin. Like people should be prepared for Nightmare Griffin in every scenario, I think. This is what makes like the striker cards really strong. This is what makes Droplet really solid in the format. Ubel can make it very easily. Malice can make it very, very easily. So people are definitely like gonna be, should be expecting that to some extent. Dude, I hate that you brought up Foolish Return. That card has been haunting me since branded format. Foolish Return on the Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. And now with Malice, it's just so scary.
Yeah. Yeah, having like a visual on your Malice card to get back in the game, and you're like, oh, I got it. And then you're like, Chain Foolish Return. And you're like, oh, no. Like the one card. It's like
Yeah.
so rough.
I also saw someone talking about Nightmare Incarnation Idley.
Okay.
Probably most people don't know this card. It's a Nightmare card from the Orcust World Legacy line.
Breaker.
It's a level 9. It's a level 9 Dark Fairy. Basically, if the total link rating of monsters on the field is 8 or more, considering the fact that the Terahertz +1 Malice is already 8, you can special summon this card from your hand as a quick effect on both players' turns, not limited to any phase. And if it is special summoned, while your opponent controls more link monsters than you do, you can send all link monsters on the field to the graveyard. Same kind of goes for Kurikara, I think. Kurikara is definitely playable right now, I would say. Similar to what we talked about with Kaijus, Kurikara on like a Malice board, pretty nice. Like Terahertz will probably at some point activate an effect, Binder to bring back, Ransom to search, White Rabbit to set, and ideally you contribute all 4 of them and just kill, right?
Kurakar has always been that card that's like in the back of your head. You're like, what if they randomly have it? You know, like that card is rough.
They might have it. They might actually have it. You can get hit with that pretty like nasty. So like I would hold off on the terahertz as much as possible.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are sending like Packbit. It's a pretty cool card. Just spell trap zoning. They're like, we want a little reminiscence of fire format.
Yeah, I think I'm playing it right now in my build over Aggregator. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, it's a cool card. It is good that they are giving us like things to play with, and I think there definitely needs to be more cards like this. Like more cards with like, you can look at it in 2 ways. Like one, should your extra cards be generic interruption without summoning them? But on the other hand, look at how many cool things it creates. Like Aggregator is the start of the format in both of the top decks, which is cool.
Bro, explain that to a Pokemon player.
I have no idea where to even start with that.
You don't have to summon the monster for it to be effective.
Bro, I don't know. Think about like a card from your trade binder being able to be played on your opponent's turn. I don't even know how they would be. Like one of your prize cards is you can use that as well for like an interruption, but they don't even have interruptions. So we need to get them into 2024.
Yeah, I think that's so crazy. I love sentences like that I'm just like, you know what? This is why we like Yu-Gi-Oh!
I think so too. I think so too. I think Yu-Gi-Oh is still like every time I come on the show, it's like a blast because we get to like dork out about Yu-Gi-Oh being cool and nice. And to all of you out there, to be honest, like be honest with yourselves. Prizing, no prizing, power creep, whatever. Yu-Gi-Oh is the best card game out of them all, and the complexity is what makes it so good. Like, I'm sorry, I tried playing a little bit of Pokemon TCG Pocket. I mean, come on, man. I'm not an 8-year-old. I need some some more mental stimulation than that.
It's so crazy, and like I think that's one thing where a lot of people don't give people credit. It's like when people are on stream and they're playing under lights and they have a bunch of people watching them and the game's already layer on layer on layer on layer. Just so many different things you got to remember, and like small effects and big effects and like hidden effects, right? I think that's
Yeah,
one thing where like when people forget something or when they make an oops when they're playing, a lot of times you just got to chalk it up to this game's super complicated. It's gonna
of course.
happen.
Yeah,
And that's one thing where I think that we can all bond over as a community and be like, listen, like this game is very difficult, and I do agree this is the best card game ever. There's not going to be one that rivals it. It's between Magic, Lorcana, Pokemon, all these different games that you're just like, oh, this game's pretty fun. Sure, I'm sure it is, but also Solitaire is probably
it is
fun for
pretty
you
fun.
too. Like,
Yeah, it is. It is pretty fun, but some people are. I mean, I'm not gonna get into the whole like moving away from Yu-Gi-Oh because it's not definitely not in my plans. I don't mean to trash like any other card game. I've played Lorcana. I've played Elestrals like extensively to understand the game and see like what people are on about. But there's something so mature about Yu-Gi-Oh, not in the sense of like the age, in the sense that like the game is like so well evolved, and the fact that there's no like rotation and you have like an immense pool of cards. It takes, and like no like modern format that is like limited to like sets like in Pokemon. You just have a massive amount of like 12, 13,000 cards, and they just go do something. Do something cool with this. And then people bring up cards from like 2006 that are broken in a new strategy, and people are like, "Oh man, we need rotation Yu-Gi-Oh." No, we don't. That's the whole freaking point, man. This is science. It's chemistry. It's biology. It's like all those things combined. It's like finding the right piece of like a gem. Jesse finding the marionette might in Unchained format. This is exactly why this game is so cool. And like dumbing a game down to like one card per turn, resource management, just like every other game copying each other. And the fact that Yu-Gi-Oh is just like explosive, of course, could be hard for a lot of people, could be not fun sometimes. Not everything is perfect about Yu-Gi-Oh. Some things need to be adjusted. But at the end of the day, I mean, look at this game. It's just like, being a plane mechanic every single day, 6 times in like 6 hours.
and that's where we get things like the invader combos. I always find that hilarious to watch. Just like he's coming.
Yeah.
It's
He's
so
never
good.
coming. He's never coming. Don't worry about it. Just scope.
It's such a good combo every time I watch those.
Yeah.
But thank you again, Galzo, for joining me today. It's been such a lovely
Thank you so much.
episode, as always. And any final thoughts?
I am, for once, excited for this format. I'm gonna try to switch it up. I think I found myself a deck. I found a lot of similarities in Malice with Branded. I've been playing Branded for a very long time, and I am starting to understand like why it's a little bit like Branded in the way that it's like very layered, and what you see is not always what you get, and it's not very clear what you should interrupt. And this is what makes it fun. So I'm happy to have a deck that is like relevant and good, and I can express like a complex gameplay style and ability with. So that's really fun. And I'm trying to grind as much as possible, like locals and stuff. I want to get to the top of the neuron rank for my region, just like as a fun exercise, and also get the achievements in Euron. I'm 1 win away with Malice and Locals to get Malice Master under my profile, which is cool. And yeah, we love Yu-Gi-Oh! Thank you so much for having me, GG. And I can't wait to come back.
Yeah, absolutely, and always. I think it's funny that you're not on branded and I'm not on tier. Like, what is happening? You know, sometimes.
Listen. We gotta move on. We gotta move on sometimes. But I promise you and people watching at home that it's not gonna be the last time. I mean, we're gonna be back at some point.
Oh, same. Oh, same.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't not gamble for very long, you know?
Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah. For legal reasons, this is a joke.
But Mill5, yeah.
Mill5 all the time. But thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. Subscribe to Galzo, subscribe to the channel, and I will catch all of you in the next video, and all of you go check out Galzo's next video. Thanks.
Peace.